Public Works Committee, Wednesday, February 26, 2025, 12 noon. We're going to call the meeting to order. Any conflicts of interest? Seeing none. Approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Strong, second by Councillor McAleer.
Just under that, do you want to wait for us to go to new business to add something for the next?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Adoption of the minutes, January 22nd, 2025. Moved by Councillor Strong, second by Councillor McAleer. Was there any business arising from those previous minutes? Seeing none. Okay, we'll go right into the reports, discussions. The War Memorial Monument Bylaw. Is that you, Mr. Johnson?
We'll
somebody
have
else?
Melanie report on that for us. Thank you
Okay.
very much for her work on it.
Melanie, would you like to take the floor, please?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. The War Memorial bylaw is just a minor change bylaw. It's not one of the high priority bylaws that require extensive changes. This bylaw required only an enforcement provision change. The enforcement provision change was previously approved by council and adopted in August through the bylaw to amend the enforcement provisions in other bylaws adopted at council August 2024. At the same time, you'd adopted the new summary and offense bylaw as well, which speaks to the bylaw enforcement officers and new fees. So in order to for those changes to take effect, what you'd adopted, we took the enforcement provisions and added it to this existing bylaw. And then, of course, the bylaw wasn't aligned with the MGA formatting, so the bylaw was updated to the new MGA formatting. Those are the only changes made, very basic. Most teams are leading these changes. I was just working with Amber and with Tracy. Tracy actually led the changes, and I'm just here to report on the work that they've been doing on that piece.
Any questions on that, folks?
Yeah, I do.
Can we put the bylaw up there?
Can we?
I don't have,
No?
I'm not connected.
Do you want me to?
I might be
Sure.
able, am I?
I can put that.
I have it here if you want, Chair.
Yep.
Yes, go ahead.
No.
If you don't mind.
I've got it there in a second. So,
That's more, yeah, that's it.
sorry, found that middle volume. There we go.
Okay.
So,
Excellent, thank you.
Mayor Brown, go ahead.
So enforcement, or as I think Councillor Duran said before the meeting, what was mentioned last night by Mr. Bellamy, who's the CEO for the Confederation Center of the Arts, that we've used that protesters have used that property around the War Memorial Monument, which is owned by the Confed Center.
there on the screen, this is the War Memorial Monument, and the property outlined in pink that the city owns does not fully abut Grafton Street, and it's just a very small parcel, basically the monument itself. Boulder Park is over in this area, and right now property of the province or Confederation Center, I'm not sure which.
So does that property, Paul, extend to the periphery or what's around the War Memorial Monument that's owned by us?
Yes,
Okay. And that also extends right down to the amphitheater, which is in the lower left-hand corner, right there, right?
correct.
Okay.
It's pretty much the
So
whole
that's-
block except for the Coles building is separated.
Yeah.
Province House is separated with a parcel that goes to the corner of Church and Richmond. And the War Memorial, is a small parcel, postage stamp.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, enforcement means are we saying that if someone uses that property for protesting, that we could send in protection services to say, you have to get off this property? Is that what we're looking at, Melanie?
So through the chair to
Yes,
worship.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
The change is from the enforcement amendment bylaw, the enforcement bylaw to change the enforcement provisions in other bylaws like this one. It's the only reference is that the provision of this, the city's enforcement and summary proceedings bylaw, that this bylaw now connects directly to our enforcement and summary proceedings bylaw, within which the bylaw enforcement officers, yes, can enforce. And there is a space around the monument that cannot be used for activities. So to your point, your worship, it is my understanding that yes, protective services could go in if they're within that square that Paul pointed out.
So that's, public protest is part of a constitutional right, so are we saying that you can't use that area for protesting whatever the cause? Mr. Chair, do you wanna,
That's a good question.
I'm just trying to.
The bylaw in essence has two main focuses. One is maintenance of the monument itself and an annual report to council that has been undertaken by Public Works. The second real issue in this bylaw is what we have on the screen as, as part 5, which is prohibited activities.
Okay.
And those would be, excuse me for jumping around, it's not as touch sensitive as I'd like it to be.
Permanent, okay.
It's this applies only to our little postage stamp of a property. So the prohibited activities are taking up permanent or temporary abode or lighting a bonfire. So if you were to step onto that property with a protest sign as you were doing your hour or two in front of Province House against something our provincial government's doing or something against the city, that in my, not enforcement, but that would not be a prohibited activity. It's only persons, and we have had an issue with somebody camping out. So you can't camp out in your protest, but you could stand there with your sign.
As long as it's not in that pink area, right?
No, you could stand there with your sign in the pink area. You can't take up temporary or permanent abode.
Okay.
And you can't light a bonfire or set off any fireworks.
Thank you.
Part 5, A and B are the only two prohibited.
Yeah, that's the original bylaw.
Okay.
This is the original bylaw, but there's no amendments being proposed to
Okay.
prohibited activities.
Go ahead, Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just if you could, Paul, just out of curiosity, could you just go back to the grid that
Mapping?
shows the monument and just in relation to Boulder Park, I was just curious to.
Touch it, it's gonna.
Yeah, so the monument is right
To your left.
to, and then where's the Boulder,
To the
Boulder
right.
Park, okay,
That's it.
that's all Boulder Park there, okay.
Yeah, but see, that land, Boulder Park, goes around the War Memorial Monument. It's a fairly big piece of land.
So when you put your hand to the left of the monument, that's still Boulder Park? That Boulder Park
It's all
there?
part of the Boulder Park pit number.
Okay,
Well, yeah.
No,
But
Yeah.
Boulder Park would
That's
be in a property identification number under the ownership of the Confederation Center of the Arts, I expect.
Right, it is.
If the Confederation Center was to transfer Boulder Park to somebody else, they would have to create a line of where it is. Maybe it's there, maybe it's here, maybe it's over there. As if I was to send somebody to visit Boulder Park, I would say it's that rectangle there with the stones from every province within it.
No, that's not my understanding.
But
that's
if
preserving.
Confed Center is looking to transfer it to somebody,
That's a different.
they may
This is a
set a
different
line
bylaw.
over here
Right.
because
Boulder Park. We're talking about Boulder
they
Park.
want
It's
to
nothing do with
include
Boulder
the
Park.
fountain and other things within Boulder Park, both
Right.
fountains within Boulder Park.
Yeah,
That would be up to them. I haven't seen,
Okay.
we're sort of off track here because you're supposed to be the War Memorial.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Melanie, sorry.
I just wanted to make sure, clarified, thank you, Chair, just that there have been no changes, unlike more significant bylaws that require extensive changes. No changes were made, just an addition that was dictated as a requirement in another bylaw. This bylaw remains as it always has been, with just that new addition, and just some formatting changes to align it with the MGA. And to Paul's point, those are the two activities that are in section
Okay.
5.
Excellent.
And Mr. Chair, just to give Paul credit, Paul was the manager of Public Works when this bylaw was developed. And it was in response to protest and other issues that took place up around that area. And I think, Paul, in 2002, we did a major restoration to the monument at a price of $100,000. So it's in need of another update, and I think that's part of what's in the budget for the capital budget for Public Works, correct? Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Drawn, you're good?
Good.
McAleer, you're good?
Thank you.
I'm not gonna ask the mayor, he might have a question. Okay, thank you for that, Melanie. Number B, sidewalk construction program, updating 5-year plan. Who has that one?
I will lead that, thank you, Chair. I'm unsure of exact dates and exactly what happened, but past committee, past manager, there was a 5-year sidewalk plan brought to the committee. Don't know whether it was informational or for adoption, but it was the working document that the department was utilizing. At that point in time, the 5-year plan was 2024 through 2029, 2028. We have, in 2024, we tendered for the majority of the street sections that had been listed for that year. Tenders went out late in the year, about 2/3 of that work has completed, the other 1/3 will be carried over into the early 2025 construction season. And then the department was, from that document, working towards what we would plan for 2025 work. And our next topic is design of 2025 work. So these two issues will meld one into the other. But in creating our 2025 capital budget request, I first took the staff's cost estimates for that 2025 work. I added on the cost to complete the 2024 work, and we were at a little over a $6 million request. Yesterday, a $3 million sidewalk budget was approved. So obviously, less than that original. The maybe 1.8 million that I was saying was needed to complete work, possibly a little bit more of that was completed this year than I thought, and it might be down to about 1.2, in between, let's say 1.5 million would be needed to complete last year's work. Would leave us with a $1.5 million for new work.
That's a carryover. From 2024 to 25.
Both carryover of approximately 1.5, still nailing it down.
Yeah.
Would leave us with 1.5 for new work. And those numbers, the balance of those two numbers could change slightly. The work as listed on that plan is about $4 million, so, and we've gone to tender on all those projects. We can award, design tender, excuse me. We can award design on all of them, and have something on the shelf, or we can make we should be making a critical decision of what it is we actually plan to do this year for about 1.5 million. The other matter that I would like to bring up is, having a 5-year plan is very good, but when I looked at that 5-year plan myself, I said, I wonder, when I see some of these various sections, I wonder what streets in the city of Charlottetown that don't have sidewalk now, we wouldn't plan to put sidewalk on in the future. And had asked staff to determine what linear length of street we don't have sidewalk on now, which is about 140 kilometers. And at today's cost, that'd be $175 million to complete sidewalks. And I liken this back to my day of ditch infill. We came and said, in the city of Charlottetown, we wanted to infill all the ditches, and have almost gotten there. Are we saying that we want a sidewalk on every street, or is there some criteria? And staff, thanks to Riley and all his work, staff are working on trying to create that criteria. We don't have it to bring to you yet for approval or adoption. But maybe as we have to whittle down this year's street section to what we can actually do with the funding we have, we use that lens of, if there's another street like this in the city, do we expect to do it in the future? What are safety issues on these streets that we need to do, and that sort of thing. Because if we ever did come up with $175 million and put sidewalks in every street, I don't think there's anybody against that, but we have to recognize the operational and additional capital costs of, we now do full winter service on all our sidewalks. So our 17 sidewalk machines that have to increase to 34 sidewalk machines, and that's on the capital side. On the operational side, it's really, a lot of these are not increased tax base because they're not new streets, they're infill work. So that operational cost is not gonna be borne by increased tax base, it's gonna be put onto the existing tax base and cost more and raise value. So there needs to be some critical thought of, when are we going to ask pedestrians to share the street with vehicles? And when do we really need to create separate infrastructure for them? And like I say, we'd always love to each have their own, but we've gotta pay for all of this. What are
It's
we,
a cost to it.
what are we going to be willing to pay for?
Riley's, oh, sorry.
If I may, or Chair, the other thing, I alluded back to ditch infill shortly after amalgamation. The other thing we need to do is, when we create the criteria of what street will someday have a sidewalk, we really need to be putting that on the developer of new subdivisions to give it to us. Because right now, we're probably going back to streets and putting sidewalks on them, while we're accepting streets without a sidewalk, that in 2 years or 20 years or 40 years, we're gonna say, let's put a sidewalk on it now. We've lost the time, we've lost the value, the opportunity of having the community pay for the new infrastructure, rather than all of the city having already paid for some infrastructure, having to pay for more.
Just a question, Joey, I guess Riley, or even you, Paul, with the streets that are listed here for sidewalks, is there people constantly on the phone or at the councilors saying, I need a sidewalk, I want a sidewalk? Because if there's a place, let's say there's 30 homes in the street, and maybe 1 or 2 people say, we need a sidewalk, but the other 15 people saying, what are you doing putting a sidewalk here, we don't really want one. Like, I guess, go for the request. If there's somebody on your case all the time, and that X street needs a sidewalk right away, or, I don't know, I'm just throwing it up there because.
Are you asking if that's kind of what's gone into developing the current list, or?
Or ways of sort of cutting back on that,
Right.
because I know when Morrow Drive was done this past fall, and one lady who lives across the street from me on Maplewood, she just said, some of the people on Morrow Drive didn't want the sidewalk. I say, that's just their opinion, but
For sure, I
I don't know, I just fired it out there.
I'll let Riley respond after me, but I expect most of the requests now have come to us through a councillor or through the public.
Okay.
We probably haven't gone back and done a full survey to find out whether that is 30% of the local opinion or 70% of the local opinion. You're probably never gonna get 100% of the local opinion, so. Riley?
Paul is correct. I mean, there's, on every street we build a sidewalk on, there will be a certain percent that are thrilled, a certain percent that's kind of indifferent, and a certain percentage that's really says they, could have lived without it type of thing. The list that's kind of we're working off of now, the 5-year plan, has been developed kind of with the thought of filling in areas where there's segments of sidewalk missing that connect other areas that do have it. Connecting subdivisions to the main roads where there's sidewalk, connecting parks, kind of local amenities, that type of thing. Those criteria aren't as formalized or like
Just the running list.
quantitative as they could be. That's what we're working on now to try to develop better sort of policies on where we decide to put them and what goes into making those 5-year plan. I'll also mention there's a active transportation plan being worked on by Environment Sustainability right now as well, and those types of considerations are being included in that study, and we will work on incorporating the results of that into future 5-year plans should they exist. But yes, and to Paul's point, we don't really follow up with residents after the fact on, you know, is the sidewalk, you know, acceptable and whatnot. The reality is we have already built it at that time and we won't be taking it out.
No, that's right,
So,
that's right.
it's kind of there.
And I'll just refer back to Morrow Drive, sorry, he just said it was sort of delayed and delayed and delayed because of the weather that hit and all that, and they couldn't finish it up at that time, and people were getting frustrated. So that's where that came from. But now that it's there, I mean, they're gonna be using it, you know, so that's what it was.
For sure.
Because that was delayed, what, a good month?
Yeah, it was delayed quite a bit and there was a lot of factors that went into that, and that's sort of, you know, ideally, we're always a year ahead with design, ready to tender early in the season for early construction. Sometimes things happen, and unfortunately on Morrow, as you said,
Yeah.
there was some late work, and obviously parts of those tenders, as Paul mentioned, were pushed to 2025, so yeah, we definitely were kind of behind the 8 ball on.
Okay. Councilor McAleer?
Just from my own understanding, Mr. Chair, maybe through to Paul or
Yeah, sure.
Right, is, so our current, as you described, Paul, for, you know, going forward for identification is for sidewalks, which kind of makes sense to me personally. What does that, does your lens or thought or comments, Paul, jive with the current criterion of what we use for sidewalks? Is do you think, should it be reviewed? Can it be, I'm just kind of wondering where we go from here in terms of the vision and the.
I guess through the chair, I would say that, computer worked for me here, doesn't want to. I'm saying that it's good to have a 5-year list. I think we need to do some more work on creating a criteria of what makes it onto the 5-year list so that we would know it's not only a 5-year list, it's a full list. What streets do someday, be it in 2 years or be it in 20 years, what streets do we think should have a sidewalk on it? Create that criteria, and again, we're not as staff quite there yet to present that. But right now, we are left with, I guess, we've gone out to, and the next item on our agenda, we've gone out to tender for design on 5 sections for this year that have cost about $4 million. We think we've got about $1.5 million that we can construct with. We're going to be saying, do we design all? And at the same time, which ones are the priority to tender for construction this year? So maybe it is appropriate that we get into that discussion, and some of the other things on a revised 5-year plan are something that we as staff are gonna have to do a little bit more work and bring back to the committee, other than just wanted to highlight right now that we do need to do this critical thinking. We may find something in this 5-year plan that we say, you know what, when we revise this, I don't think it's ever gonna be a sidewalk there, you know. It's not there, but just to be absurd, say, you know, we've got a cul-de-sac with 2 houses on it that we're planning to put a sidewalk on. probably that needs to be removed, and we never consider that a cul-de-sac with two houses will get a sidewalk. So have that
Yeah.
lens in the back of our mind as we try to decide what we're doing today. And I guess if I may, Chair, I would lead us into sort of the next topic on our,
Council Drong, got a question.
sorry.
Sorry, Council Drong.
Sorry to interrupt. It-
No.
It's just, I know when this came up a couple of years ago, council adopted it to get a plan looking forward. And it was always gonna be a document that could be changed. I know myself on Cedar Avenue, I happen to live in the street, but when you talk to all your neighbors, you know, there was gonna be an active transportation pathway, or then it was changed to a sidewalk, which I haven't spoke to anybody that wanted this. We see about 2 people walk down the street, but I was told that since we had a park there, it was gonna be connected. So that was like $1 million for a sidewalk that nobody wanted. So I can appreciate if you're diving back into this, to see if, you know, if you're ever gonna put a sidewalk in a street that, you know, maybe the residents don't want, is kind of very wasteful. You know, I can appreciate you know, it's not in stone, everything is not gonna be done. That was gonna be like a $5 million project every year that we were looking at putting into sidewalks. As we know during budget time, we don't have that money to do. So, you know, thank you for looking into this. What does the colors mean? I can't find, like, green, blue, and yellow.
So on the document provided in the package, the blue and yellow are in the 2024 year. Excuse me while I try and get this sized correctly. The blue and yellow are in the 2024 year, and those are projects which were tendered. And both of them have some completions that are remaining. The Birch Hill Montgomery needs to be completed in 2025, and the Angus Drive needs to be completed in 2025. The other sections were substantially complete last year.
Okay.
What we have gone, as I said, Chair Ramsey, what we've gone out to tender for design on and have received bids is 5 sections. It's the green of Westcombe, the green of Parkside, the green of Stockman, the green of a combined Elizabeth Christie, and the green of Alena Court. You add those up, you get an estimated construction cost, like I say, in the area of 4 million. I'm sorry, I don't have a document with them individually, but I do have the numbers written here in front of me. Alena's about $460,000, Elizabeth Christie's about $340,000, Stockman's about 1.1 million, Parkside's about 530 million, and West Combe is about 750,000. We need to pick between those and come up with something that would give us our our 3 million that we plan to spend.
Mr. Chair, can I-
Yes, you go right ahead, CAO.
I'm just trying to play catch up here, so I'm going to apologize in advance if this is not an appropriate question. I'm just trying to understand, if we don't have set criteria for what constitutes a need for a sidewalk in a neighborhood, how did we get this list in the first place? Where did it emanate from? Did it emanate mostly from public demand?
I can answer that.
Yeah.
The previous manager.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, to
Yeah,
Councillor
both. I mean,
Duran's point, I
it's
guess
both.
that the question, you know, if we're talking about millions of dollars on sidewalks that people in that neighborhood don't want, then what was the criteria for determining that we did in fact need it?
Well, the manager was pushing to get that through Cedar.
The active transportation
Well, yeah,
path,
and it was the councillor from the area said, don't need it,
but it still made it onto the budget.
right, but it's not on there, shouldn't be on there now. Anyways, sorry to interrupt.
Riley, go ahead.
It's, yeah, the former list, or I guess really in reality, the current list that we're looking at, developed under various factors, public input and requests from elected was certainly one. looking at connections to parks and local amenities was another. Sort of infilling areas that have small, short segments of missing sidewalk that would, if constructed, create a much larger continuous network. Those types of things. As I mentioned before, it was not the most quantitative exercise. A lot of it was sort of a judgment under under that context, but as Paul has mentioned and Councillor Drawn and others, looking back into this with a more well-defined set of criteria is certainly not a bad idea, and we'll likely see the list change quite a bit.
Just to that point, just as a follow-up, Mr. Chair, I'm sure there's best practices out there. And maybe we could elicit some support from Melanie to see if she can find any best practices out there for criteria. I don't know if that's something in your wheelhouse or not, Melanie, or if it's one of the staff here that could follow up on that, but I mean, certainly I think we don't need to reinvent something. I'm sure there's best practices out there.
And staff would work on that renewed 5-year list by hopefully mid to late summer to get us ready for next year. Right now, it's what are we going to award design on and plan construction on this summer.
And when it was approved 2 or 3 years ago, or a couple of years ago, it's a moving document, it's a working document. Like, things could be taken off, put on, just like our budget and all that stuff, right? Like, whatever's there that was set up 2 years or wherever it was, it's not carved in stone, that you know, it has to go on a lane of court, for example. It has to go here, it can be removed.
The manager's saying that we've got X amount of money for this fiscal
right.
coming up, and so someone needs to decide where that money's being directed
Yeah.
for this fiscal.
So,
Your
Mr. Chair,
worship, go ahead.
I
Sorry,
think
John.
we recall from last year's capital budget, I think there was 0 in for sidewalks and 0 in for streets. So people sat back in the gallery as all the councils fought to get money into the budget. So what did we end up putting into the budget? 3,000,000.5. That was last year's budget. And if I look at what Mr. Lane Pino, our manager of finance, gave us last week on first draft of our budget discussion, up to 3.5 million as of February 12th, 25, only 2.5 million was spent. So there's probably, I'm sure there's still more receivables out there to be paid, but if we're to do $6 million, like, are contractors capable of doing that? That's a lot of work going out for the companies or the enterprises that are out there that do this work. But Paul, just a couple of quick questions. So are you saying to finish off our sidewalks, ATPs, multi-use paved pathways, we still have 140 kilometers left to do? Is that what you, I just wanted.
There's 140 approximately, these are very rough numbers, approximately 140 kilometers of city-controlled street network that have no sidewalk on either side or no active transport path or anything like that.
So my understanding, we have about 258 kilometers of streets and roads in Charlottetown? I thought we were at 150 kilometers of sidewalks in Charlottetown.
The
So-
numbers are not going to match perfectly.
Okay.
Because there are city sidewalks on provincially controlled streets. And, is this my document here? There's sidewalks on provincially controlled streets. And there's lots of streets in the downtown core and elsewhere that have sidewalks on both sides.
Right.
We have approximately 175 kilometers now of street and pathways. There's 140 kilometers of city-controlled streets that don't have a sidewalk. Do some of them need double sidewalks?
No.
Possibly. But those are very rough numbers.
So, if I could just finish, John?
No.
So
And,
it's,
yeah, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
you asked about streets, about 254 kilometers of street network.
so when we talk about sidewalks, multi-purpose trails, we do have 425,000 in 24-25 budget for sidewalk and curb materials. So that's our own crew doing the work,
That's a
correct?
union crew
Yeah.
doing maintenance on existing infrastructure.
Okay, so we're looking at 3.5 million. So Paul, when you do sidewalks, it's concrete. When you do pathways, ATPs, multi-use paved pathways, it's asphalt. Of the two products, I know what one is cheaper, and I know what one is less expensive to maintain.
I thought it was about the same.
Asphalt, it's concrete? No,
That's what I understood
geez.
from the last manager, it was about similar cost.
They are similar unit costs between the two. The pathways become wider infrastructure.
Right,
They
That's the
usually-
only reason.
They usually involve having to do some storm work to institute them and things like that, so based on last year's tendered prices, it was about $125 a linear meter for the pathway and $150 for the sidewalk, Robbie?
yeah, but
Off by an order of 10, but.
Okay, sorry.
But yeah, about
Thank you.
$1,200 per meter of concrete sidewalk and about $1,400 per meter of
But for
asphalt
the
trail.
ATP, multi-use paved pathways, we're going wider.
Much wider,
And we're also probably going into ditches that we have to fill in.
correct.
Yeah, so like I worked with concrete. The cost per cubic yard, cubic meter is substantially more expensive than asphalt. But in terms of maintaining one or the other, the easier of the two is the latter, which is the multi-use paveways. Because with concrete, it's movement and there's fixing or maintenance that have to be.
The only thing to speak to that, though, your worship, for winter maintenance of it.
Yeah.
They're also twice as wide, if not more. So,
And
to
the paved,
pave
multi-use paved
pathways,
pathways, yeah.
yes, so to keep them open, it's not one or two passes, it's usually three.
Right. But my point I'm trying to make here is that I think we can do more with asphalt than we can with concrete. And when we talk about how do we come to this decision on where do we put a sidewalk, an ATP, a multi-use paved pathway, you know what, it comes down to safety. That's the first and foremost priority. And I think that's what Councillor Duran was trying to say about Cedar Avenue, is that the traffic, the pedestrian traffic in that area just didn't really warrant $1 million pathway through that neighborhood. I know a lot of other neighborhoods that would love to have it. So safety, and then also providing more pedestrian friendly neighborhoods. Those are the keys for me. And we couldn't come at a better time, because come March 12th, we will have our first public hearing on the first our official plan. And that official plan, it's very clear. They've identified corridors, 3 main corridors. Lower Malpeck Road, North River Road. Malpeck Road, University Avenue. St. Peter's Road, Longworth Avenue. That's where we should have multi-use pathways, multi-use paved pathways, or ATPs. That's where we should creating, and in this plan, official plan, is to create nodes, neighborhoods. That's where we can have a better understanding of where we wanna go with this budget item for sidewalks, ATPs, multi-use paved pathways. Like, for example, Elena, I was on council when that was rezoned for what it is now, and the zoning has changed. I know yourself, Councillor Duran, and Councillor Ramsey, you've been on council to see how many times that property has been rezoned there. So a lot of the work that was done in that area, they just pushed streets through, and then who has to come in later to put the pathways and the sidewalks? The city of Charlottetown. So to get back to Paul's presentation, is that, we have to look seriously on these new subdivisions that are gonna be created in our city, that there has to be a responsibility to at least provide funding to create ATPs, multi-use pathways, multi-use paved pathways or sidewalks.
So if I'm not clear, sorry, he was waiting. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead.
No, I just want
I'm
a
sorry.
question on that, like the developers, at one point you had a certain size of road to go in, right? So I understand, the pressure would to be build a sidewalk, But now the new developments, you require a wider road. So now there's 3 cars can go down the road. So now you're coming back and saying, not only do you want three cars going down the road, now you want a sidewalk or an active transportation and put that on the developer. Well, who can afford that? Like all these developments that are going on, they're barely just getting by. They put the street in, they put all the infrastructure in. Now you're gonna put a big amount of money on top of that, which they can't get back. I don't know, we want development. We're getting federal government to get development. We need housing, but when we sit here and the decision makers keep putting it on the developers, how are they supposed to afford this?
That's why, Councillor Durant, I said shared cost.
Oh, I missed that.
No, shared cost.
Okay.
That's, I think, the developer and our planning department and our public works department and water and wastewater have to sit down. Like, if we're gonna make these nodes pedestrian friendly, then let's make the plan work. Before we put everything in, put people in the apartment buildings, put people in the duplexes, triplexes, townhouses. Let's have a plan to create these nodes that provide pedestrian friendly neighborhoods. So that's what I said, No,
Okay.
I don't wanna always put the burden
Oh, no,
on
it's,
one.
it has to be shared for sure.
Of course.
Oh, Councilor McAleer, sorry.
Yeah, no, just a comment, it's a great discussion, this whole thing is, always seems to be, a bit of a moving document, and to me, on to Paul's, or the manager's point about identifying streets, and then that perhaps we're not going to consider, that might be, that certainly makes sense to be something to be working on as well, and if you're doing that with the mayor's comments regarding, the official plan being updated in safety and, these parkways, so, maybe there's a way to get this thing distilled down, to identify streets that, don't fit that criteria, and, it's gonna be a work in progress, but, it certainly seems to make sense to start identifying things that don't fit, and, refine the criteria for the ones that do.
Excellent. Okay,
So, Mr. Chair, just quick, that corridor the corridor I'm talking about on the west side, Lower Malpeck Road, north of the road. There's already a sidewalk there on the east side, I know from Queen's Arms intersection right into Brighton Road. There's no reason that we cannot turn that into an ATP or a multi-use paid pathway. Widen it and make it used for walkers, cyclists, moms and dads with baby carriages, and that creates a safe pathway for all users, cyclists, walkers, anyone that rollerblading, because we're doing it now with some of our ATPs around the city. That will, I believe, significantly change how people get to work. Right now, people are just hopping into the cars and heading in and from West Royalty. And I'm not gonna say that everybody's gonna jump on their EV or on their e-bike, no. It's the start of how we have to make our community more pedestrian friendly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
okay. Everyone good? Let's go to C. Sidewalk and multi-use path design. Did we hit that with that other one?
So last year, part of the reason that some of the work is being pushed forward to completion this year is because we didn't have designs done soon enough. Staff utilizing all they had, which was the previous 5-year list, which had been presented to committee, have gone out to tender, and we have received prices for these 5 sections that you see on the left of the screen. That is the estimated construction cost of each of those. Tell me which ones we plan to do, and in the green it'll populate how close you're getting to your $1.5 million that you have to spend this year. And then we'll make the decision if we're awarding all of them for design, because we might do some of them next year, or whether it was a piecemeal pricing, whether there's some of them that we would not do for design, or if there is some section that staff haven't anticipated that you want us to go out to ask for design and see if we could get it on the books for this year or next year.
So you want us to make that decision? Go ahead,
Well, if the
Councilor.
decision is to kick it back to staff and not tell you what we're
Oh, no,
doing,
no,
we'll do that.
no, no, we won't do that,
Oh,
we
is that
won't do
option?
that.
No, don't do that.
No.
Okay, Councilor.
Okay. Elizabeth, you know as well as I do, Mayor Brown, we've been getting letters about that, there's 2 streets that are not connected. We get a letter that they've been saying, they've been there
Got
20.
your old buddy Ivan?
Yeah, no, the Browns. But there's 2 streets that go up and the sidewalks don't round it off, right?
It's right there.
So they walk up the street and then there's nowhere to, there's no, this has a sidewalk here and Parkside
Has one.
has one. Parkview. So there's no connector, so they're walking down the middle of the street here, and
Yeah.
it's just not
Has to be
safe.
done.
So they've been asking, we've been putting it in and it's been denied or missed, it's not a very big area, it's not one of the big ticket items. But these people, they keep saying someone's gonna get hit someday, and they've they've said it 3 times I've been there, I don't know if it's been 3 or 4 mayors, they've pleaded with that, so that's my case on that one. Hopefully, we can
I second that.
move that one
I
ahead.
second that.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
Maybe I'm not here longer so I can speak freely, and maybe I'm not even sooner. I look at that, initially, just so that you don't jump me before I leave the room. I did ask.
Well, he wouldn't do that.
I did ask Riley to do some pedestrian and vehicle counts on Elizabeth, and they were more than I was expecting, but I look at that, Elizabeth Drive, and I say, only vehicles that are in the area are there. It's not through traffic, it's not a whole lot of people commuting. Yes, they're out doing their after dinner walk and that sort of thing, but if we do Elizabeth Drive, what street in the city of Charlottetown do we not do? That's where I'm coming from. Are we saying that we've got $175 million of sidewalk that we need to have the public put in place and then begin winter maintenance on? And we'll tell the finance department that and find out whether they think we need to raise the tax rates in 10 years or 20 years or whatever. I do know, for whatever reason, we have gotten that there's already sidewalk on McKay Drive right here that's just as quiet as Elizabeth, or just not quiet, just the same conditions as Elizabeth. And there may be sidewalk there is sidewalk there in Parkview, excuse me, that's just the same conditions as Elizabeth. But what are we not going to do that is more critical this year and in the future than doing Elizabeth? And I know the people there would love to have that sidewalk. Recently related to me, we put a sidewalk in, but nobody's using it, they're still using the street. We put it in, and Riley, I didn't pull the numbers up, I don't know whether you remember them off the top of your head, he's got them there.
If I could just, oh, sorry.
If we could,
Sorry,
just-
my apologies.
Just,
We had done as Paul mentioned, a traffic and pedestrian count on Elizabeth as well as another street up there, but in the course of 16 hours from 6 AM to 10 PM, there was 143 vehicles on Elizabeth Street and 14 pedestrians. Granted, this was done in February, so a little cold, and we've had cold weather this February in particular, but as Paul mentioned, that would be a very, very low volume street, and that pedestrian volume is also quite low, and as Paul also mentioned, most likely folks out for recreational activity as opposed to commuting or really getting to and from somewhere in particular, but.
Councilor McAleer, go ahead.
Could you
Yeah,
just
you're
go
up.
back to the list, Paul?
certainly. I will hopefully get us there in a second. It doesn't want to pop up. There we go. There we go.
So, Parkside Drive is in Ward 7. Could you have a similar criteria or a similar comment that you have for Elizabeth Drive on Parkside?
We did not go and Elizabeth, Elizabeth got picked on a little bit as low-hanging fruit. For Parkside, did not do any traffic counts to see what the traffic volumes are in that area.
Well, anyway, I'd certainly would like to have that advanced if we could, just my plug.
Can I just follow
Yeah,
up?
go right ahead.
I know you went there. Mr. Chair, can I just go back to Elizabeth Drive?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
I just want
Oh,
to,
you're looking to see,
just
sorry.
go back to the image. Okay. So, guess what? This is an established node. This is a neighborhood node right here. This probably goes back to Stu McKay's house, which is on the corner of McKay and
Christie.
Christie Drive. That's how old this neighborhood. There's also a heritage property that Doug DeMay lives in, just off the end of Vic Campbell Boulevard.
Yeah.
Right there. So this is an established node. And the comprehensive review of our official plan, the new plan that we're looking at, talks about corridors and promoting nodes established in these neighborhood nodes, which also will hopefully, and I'm sure will, promote friendly neighborhoods, pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods. And I'll give you an example, a contrast. Out of McCrae Drive, the councillor from that area wanted to ensure that McCrae Drive circled up around East Rowley Road to connect to McWilliams Road. And when I campaigned that area in 2010, 2014, 2018, 2022, guess what people wanted? They wanted an area that they could walk around. That's what we have here. And if I had my way, I'd also put a sidewalk on Christie Drive. Because that would make a full loop of that area. You have to also remember, Paul, down at the end of Parkview Drive, there's Park Royal Seniors Home. There's a seniors home.
Yeah.
And the seniors, need to get out. Green space there, where's the green space there, Bob?
Right beside it.
Right across from.
That's in behind the church, right?
Yeah.
So you have to go through the
There's a park
church.
right across from the seniors.
Yeah, there's a park right across. the
Yes,
senior-
McCausland's Park, right. So, again, I'm supporting, Elizabeth Drive, Paul, because I think that actually pushes the envelope on what we wanna do with our new official plan, and that is to create corridors and
Okay,
neighborhood nodes.
let's go with,
Well, and I respect that, and I mean, with all due respect, you guys go out in February for 16 hours, and it could have been blowing that day, and you're going, the whole thing is, well, there hasn't been only 2 walkers. When I drive around there in the summer and the spring, people are all over the place. So, maybe it was a bad day for you, so let's not base everything on one day in February. I don't know how many times I've driven in that area and people have to get off the road, right? So
Yeah.
there's more and more people walking than
so
not
you
one
want us
day.
to pick some, Paul?
Yeah.
I've heard support for Elizabeth, I've heard support for Parkside, that brings us up to $870,000.
And I'm gonna support
Okay.
Elena. Because if you've been down Elena Court,
Yeah,
it is, again, I was on council when the Love subdivision was rezoned for apartments, duplexes, triplexes. And in terms of infrastructure, I don't know if you were around then, Richard.
So it's at 1.3 that gives us?
That is 1.3,
I think Elena Court, if you go to Elena Court,
We're looking at
there-
what, 1 point,
1.5. That's Elena Court.
there's Elena Court.
yeah, oh yeah, we got it.
So if you go down here, these are all apartment buildings.
Yeah.
Seniors down here, seniors there. And right here, we have a transit shed,
Yeah,
so,
As well as school bus.
and school bus. So kids are walking down there, there's still more area for it to develop. Do we have a sidewalk here, Paul?
Paved pathway.
Paved pathway.
It's
Well, I'd go with
multi-use
pathway there too.
multi-use pathway that is recommended for Elena.
Good.
okay, we're 1.3,
Keep at it.
So out of the remaining, there's really not a lot that you could do.
we got 200,000 to play with.
That can be your contingency for the course of the year. Would we design Stockman and Westcombe
Yes.
to be ready to roll next year, or should there be any more funding.
Or if there's a windfall
Located this
profit
year?
in the middle of this fiscal year?
Councillor Drawn, what's your opinion on that?
I mean, you go out to West Royalty there, they got double sidewalks everywhere. You know, let's share it around. Places that don't have sidewalks, then let's look at that. I mean, maybe that certain street needs it, I don't know. But I know driving around there, there's sidewalks everywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
So are you pleased with those three and then use the $200 or 200,000 for the,
sure,
for the design?
Yes.
that'd be great.
I agree with your recommendation.
So-
Councillor McAleer, you agree? Mayor Brown?
I agree with you.
So
No, that's
this,
a first.
this is the fact that you're designing Stockman and Westcombe with an intent that you will construct them in the very near future, next 2 or 3
In the
years?
future, don't say very near. I mean, but some might look at
Well,
3 months.
if we're really and truly, if we weren't planning to build them in 2026,
Right.
I would say don't bother designing them in case there's changes or various things that go on. It's nice to have design on the
Yeah.
shelf, but really only 1 year, maybe 2 years ahead of time.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, last year, we did work in Westcombe. I think we went from Northwoods Parkway up
Yes.
to where it takes it into Andrews Court, correct? That's how far we went up? So what was the price of that? That was, I think $750? I don't have it, it's not in this. It's not in here. Anyways, it was
Need a
a
motion to move that up?
We need to circle back.
Westcombe from Northridge to,
Yeah, Central Avenue.
what's the laneway?
Also need them
road
to
that goes into
provide
Andrews.
project
Glenview
sheets
Lane, I think.
for-
That's right.
That's it, Glenview.
So it stopped there at Glenview Lane.
Recommendations.
Yeah.
So is this 1.1 million to go from Glenview Lane around Andrews Court?
That's correct.
Okay, so we can design that. But that Andrews Court, have you been in it, Riley? You've been in Andrews Court. It's a circular area with, and it was built or it was designed that the green space was in the middle, correct? That's how, the green space is in the middle. But that is definitely a neighborhood node, but everything around it is also part of a greater neighborhood node. So where do we, I think that's where we're gonna start splitting where we want to put sidewalks, ATPs, MUPPs in these neighborhood nodes. Because some of them are gonna be on a larger macro, then there'll be the micro, right? Andrews Court would be part of the micro part of it, I think the micro segment of this node. I would suggest you design it, there it is right there, right? There's the node inside Andrews. There's
So what do you suggest, Paul? We're gonna go with the 3,
Yes?
and then you got the 200,000.
You don't have to spend it.
No,
It's-
that's right, you don't have to spend it
It
all
would
right away.
be nice to be planning ahead, and I can see whereby there would be large volumes of people and traffic circling Westcombe Crescent. I can see where Stockman Drive would be a through route for vehicles from the lower Malpeck Road to the Malpeck Road.
That's right,
Yeah.
I agree.
And they were constructed, I'll send out an email later, but to Councillor Drawn's earlier comments, they were constructed as 20-foot wide streets. When we moved Councillor Drawn to the 28-foot wide streets, our hope was that it would accommodate pedestrians and cyclists. But what we hear back from the community members is they're close to traffic and they're scared and they want a sidewalk now. So if we did require a developer to put a sidewalk in, we might be changing that cross-section to a reduced street width, which would be a less cost to the developer.
Which is a shared cost,
Okay.
shared responsibility.
John?
That's not shared.
It's a developer cost.
28 is going down to
The
20.
street- The street is a developer's cost.
But the 8 foot that's been widened from 20 to 28, he's saying that could be your pathway, correct?
In new subdivisions, we could alter the cross-sectional requirements if a sidewalk or pathway is needed, a narrower street, which would be plus and minuses on the developer's full costs of infrastructure that they turn over to the city. I wouldn't say whether at the end of the day, whether it's a plus to the developer or a minus to the developer.
No, but I mean, that's something. You know, at least if you're going from 28 feet down to 20, and then you could look at a cost share for the activation pathways, right? So that would reduce the cost for the developer and reduce the cost for the city as well.
Councillor McAleer, just wrap this up.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, you know, on Parkside Drive, Paul and Raleigh, you know, be quite, you know, supportive of any lens you wanna put on that in terms of, you know, in terms of functionality, traffic, safety, connectivity to, I know it, I mean, I know it's a busy street. Lots of walkers, lots of activity in the neighborhood, so it also, I guess, from Beach Grove Road down to connecting, you know, with the Parkway, it doesn't, it's not, this leg, if it happens, it's not going that far. I think it's from Beach Grove to Crestview. So if in your opinion it's doesn't fit where you think we're going, you know, I'd like to hear that.
One last question.
Yes, sir.
Quick. I noticed you dropped Lincolnwood from Maple Avenue to Brackley. Is there a reason why that was there? I know the street is wider, right? And it has a bike lane on each side, I believe. So I'm just wondering, was that dropped for a reason, or was just
No, that,
Please.
I think when we had readjusted the plan, initially Parkside had been the whole length, and that was, kind of realized that was a big chunk to bite off in one time, had split that into 2 years, and as a result, something had to kinda be flip-flopped, and I think Lincolnwood was just pushed down for that reason. Still,
you're not picking on me, are you?
Atta boy, Riley.
I mean, I think part of the thought too was that, and I know Cedar Avenue is another conversation and is worthwhile looking back into and, you know, potentially nixing, but since that was still sort of a loose end, that was from a previous year that got pushed down the list, that it would be probably not logical to do both of them in 1 year, just be a big project in one area, a lot of disruption. So that was kind of the reconfiguration that happened, and that's, as you mentioned, like the living document, kinda as things go, and if there's sections that get pushed or advanced a year, assuming a constant budget every year, something else has to kinda
Sure. I just
trickle down.
asked the
And
question.
that's-
So Paul, you'll give us,
Right now, the
Or the
best
council?
ranked submission on sidewalk design was CBCL at $8,250. If we remove Stockman and Westcomb from that, they would still be the best ranked submission, and it would be $36,900. So it's an extra $4,600 to design the other two, if you felt they were to be built in the near future.
Yeah.
I'd recommend we award all to CBCL.
Yeah.
Tell them to concentrate on Alena and Elizabeth and Parkside, and get tenders out on that work as quickly as we could.
you wanna go with that?
Fully agree, sir.
Fully agree. And
Now-
what does he gotta give us?
You need a mover and
Just-
seconder to get it in there.
Move.
Yes, I need a mover.
Yeah. Just want a clarification. So, Paul, we're gonna be doing design work, engineering work, but may not do the work this year, correct? And that's capital expense?
We would start with the design, and our expectation is that our budgetary units are correct, and we would be able to immediately after completion of design, go to tender to construct Alena, Elizabeth Christie, and Westcomb. And the Parkside, and the Stockman Westcomb would sit on the shelf, they'd be designed last.
But we can
And
capitalize, that doesn't have to come out operational, right?
It would be a
Okay,
capital.
I just wanna clarify that.
It's one project of sidewalk design for, yes, capitalized.
And I need another motion.
No, before you leave that, Mr. Chair, in order for it to get approved in the chamber, this committee made recommendations on specific properties, specific streets. So in the report, we should indicate in the report which streets you guys decided on today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
we
that
did.
they, well, it's not in the report right now. I don't see it in the report.
No, because we didn't know what
What
Yeah,
streets was gonna
so,
be.
so staff,
The resi-
yeah, so the staff didn't make a recommendation, it was discussed here.
Yeah.
So in the updated report going into chambers, you need to demonstrate the streets that you've selected and why in the report.
We will list the streets that will be designed under this, and we will list when the anticipated construction for them might be.
Okay, cause that's
Three
part
of
of the
them
vote.
immediately, 2 of them in the
Yeah.
future.
Okay,
Second.
Okay, and the other thing, we need a motion to move in for the war memorial bylaw. I forgot to say that.
I'll move that.
You'll move that
Yeah.
again, your worship?
Yeah.
Second by Councillor McAleer. So we're good with that one?
Did we not do that?
I think you already did it.
yeah, but you didn't move and second it, to go in there.
Yeah, we didn't, we approved it here, but we didn't move it and second it to win to council, to council approve it, that's all.
Okay.
Which I guess we had to do. I was told that too as well. Okay, excellent, great discussion, Civic Board for Persons with Disability. The minutes are in your package, January 21st. Amber, would you like to take that? Is that,
No, just pretty straightforward, just the minutes from that meeting, we had that
yeah,
meeting.
and
Just there for council's or committee's information.
and when's the awards night, I'm sorry?
It is on Monday, March
This
3rd.
coming Monday,
Yes, it's on this Monday. Amber, starting at what,
6
6?
P.M.
6 p.m.,
We'll be meeting first at what?
Yeah, the committee, the
4:30?
advisory board will be meeting at 4:30 prior to.
So this invitation is out to all of council, all of staff to come out at 6 o'clock, Monday the 4th, is it?
The 3rd.
3rd, here in the foyer and the Park Building.
Yeah.
To present awards for.
Right on. Yep. Okay. Introduction of new business.
Did you wanna go first? Did you have something?
Yes, I got a call, if you don't mind.
Oh, no.
I got a call from the manager from Eastlake last night after their meeting there too. Beach Street, when we're coming in, the original Beach Street,
Yeah,
is there any way that somebody can go look, Joey or Riley or Paul or something, that if they can go in that way when they're going to a function at the Eastlink Center, right off Beach Street, and have one of those errands like you do at UPEI, but they can't go out that way, they gotta go out the opposite way, because what he's saying is that people are not going to the Eastlink for certain things, because you gotta drive all the way around the block and come in the other way for that back parking lot. No, he just said, he brought it up to me and I said, I will certainly bring it up and maybe Public Works should just have a look at it. If it's gonna be pain or it'll cost a lot of money, no.
who maintains it?
It's been
Do we have someone there to
What's
put the gate up and? put the
I
gate
don't-
down?
on?
Like they just sort of suggested to have it up and down like when you're going in, but you can't get out that way.
That's not true.
I know, and he just, I said, I'll bring it up, you know, and we'll discuss it.
We can study it.
That's an operational issue and
I'd
it's
study
not-
that.
And then we can, like, Joey or Riley or something, just take a drive by, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
I think.
It's not a hill we're
I
gonna
think,
die
Mr. Chair, you just have one of our staff follow up with the manager.
Yeah.
And suggest they come up with some sort of solution for his concerns, but I don't think that's anything we can debate here as a
No.
committee.
No, I'm just bringing it up, it's just,
Yeah, yeah, it's
because
just
I get the phone call, I was by there today.
not a committee item.
No,
Mr. Chair, just under, Paul and Joey and Riley and Amber, this is just a heads up for the next meeting. These rapid flashing lights that are at a lot of intersections are working very well.
fantastic.
A lot of great comments. And I know on Belvedere Avenue near the farmer's market, we do have a light there, but your traffic is not seeing it. I've crossed that section of the Confederation Trail with my e-bike. You have to look both ways, which you should be doing anyways. You should be doing it anyways, I understand that. But at Sightline, those flashlights, rapid flashlights work. And I did have some calls from where the Confederation Trail crosses Lower Malpeck Road out by Stockman Drive. It's another area that is somewhat
dangerous because no one, I shouldn't say no one. That speed limit is, I think, 50, 60 kilometers an hour. I don't think it's always that when people are driving in that part of the road. Those are just two intersections that I know have high frequency of users.
Allen
And,
Street too.
Hmm?
Allen Street too.
yes, yes. And Joey, this is just for your own crew, for the crew, but, over the last couple of weeks, I know it's been very difficult to do the cleanup because of the snow. But there's a need to, get some of our duty crews out there, not just downtown Charlottetown.
Garbage, you mean?
Yeah,
we're-
it's, I'm actually picking it up, and
Yeah,
someone
we're at it
yelled
now.
out, you're gonna get a grievance against you.
Yeah, no, we're at it now, because once with the snow receding, we're starting to see it more too, so, yeah,
Just-
we've been.
Just wanna give you that heads up. Thank you.
Any other, Councillor Drawn, you good?
Pretty good, thank you.
Just pretty good?
Yeah, pretty good.
Councillor McAleer?
Yeah, just an inquiry or clarification or a look at, and I think CAO may have passed it on to you, Paul. Question was raised for me from, anyway, one of our firemen living my ward about the possibility, consideration of a three-way stop at the corner of, Scott and Beach Grove Road. I had no idea if it has application, but I said I'd ask the question. Anyway.
Receive the comment, we will do a review and respond.
And I like to say, with the storm and the ice and all that stuff, the Public Works crew did a great job,
Very good.
very good job, a lot
Better
of
than
compliments
Montreal.
and things like that, so if you can pass it on to you and your staff, we're very appreciative of it. Streets are great shape. Thank you.
6, 8 behind.
Is a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, thanks, sir.
Okay, sir.
Oh, Jesus, bad.
Mayor Brown and Councillor Drawn.
We're off the internet.